Hello and welcome to Lesson 13, More Examples of What Not to Follow. Just by way of introduction, this is the last chapter that I wrote in this first release of the book. And so what I put in here was things that didn't seem to fit anywhere else. So this is kind of your leftovers chapter in the first edition of the book. If more things come to light during discussion about these sorts of topics, then we'll do more lessons. So this lesson might sound a little bit, what's this all about? And the reason being, it's just what was left over. So, dear ladies, many of you might have read the last two chapters and be finally shaking your head at how women like Jennifer treat honest men of honor and integrity who are great husbands like me. I have talked to tens of thousands of men in the West. My stories are hardly unusual. The only thing that are unusual about my stories is that I am willing to tell them. The vast majority of men are not willing to tell their stories for the very reason that women and men alike will make up lies about them and tell those lies over and over again, knowing full well that the current crop of criminals in the government courts will not prosecute them. The criminal slandering, lying women and men alike have no honour and no integrity and should be denounced as such and not listened to. However, women and men love to tell lies about honest men of honour and integrity because they are small people who know they could never do what I have done. So to compensate them for their own inadequacies that they are well aware of, they like to tell lies about their betters. It makes them feel better. They do not care that they are setting a bad example for the children of their land. They merely wish to get the positive feeling hit that goes with telling lies about someone who is better than them and attempting to do that person damage. This has become mainstream in the West. Lying about other people to make yourself feel better for a few minutes is now quite a standard thing to do. In Germany, such behaviour is not indulged. If you go about telling lies about people in Germany, you will be prosecuted in the current court system. This is one more reason I like to live in Germany. Now, in this chapter, I'm going to include a few more personal stories that do not really fit in any of the previous chapters. You can take from these personal stories what you will. It is really up to you. They are presented as examples of what I would recommend Western women not follow. So, just before Christmas 2005, I was sitting at my desk at a client in Germany on a Friday afternoon. It was about 3 p.m. My cell phone went off from Jennifer's cell phone. We had an agreement that if it was absolutely necessary for her to call me, she should call me from her cell and I would excuse myself no matter what the situation and take the call. Such agreements have to be made when a man has children. This was the call that Jared had cancer. Jennifer asked me to please come home. She needed me. Yeah, she needed me. I should jump. I need her. She doesn't care. Of course, when I needed her, I could take a running jump, right? But when she needed me, she called me. And I told her I would check the flights and get back to her. I found a flight I could get if I left in the next 2 hours. I took my project manager aside and told him that I had a family emergency and it was necessary for me to return home. I told him I might not be in early next week, that I would call him on Sunday evening to let him know my position. He is a father himself and understood that this situation was the priority. I was home by midnight. On the Saturday, I went into Dublin and organised tickets for Jennifer and the 2 children to fly direct to Sydney to be with Jared. The first tickets I could get were the Tuesday morning. So on the Tuesday morning, I put Jennifer and the younger children on the plane back to Australia and I went back to work in Germany. I had to explain to my project manager the seriousness of the situation, that my son had cancer and was in the early stages of diagnosis. All we were told was, prepare for the worst. He had not been fully checked out at this stage. The diagnosis was eventually that he was a 20% chance to live unless we tried a new experimental procedure. We were told that this might increase his chances to as much as 50%, but since it had never been performed in Australia, no one really knew. The specialist was going off research papers. This treatment would be 6 months. Jennifer and I agreed that she could stay with him 24/7 for the 6 months. We could allow the younger children some time away from school, but certainly we could not allow them 6 months off school. That would cause them to repeat a whole year, which seemed too much. So I decided to get Jennifer to ask our eldest daughter, Kristen, who was not working at the time, to please come back to Dublin and care for the 2 smaller children, while Jennifer returned to Australia to care for Jared. We timed her trip back to Ireland to bring back the 2 children to coincide with the date we needed to apply for Irish citizenship in February 2006. We had arrived in February 2001. Jennifer was to bring back the little ones with Kristen, go through the paperwork and processing for the citizenship application, and then return to Australia to care for Jared 24/7. I flew in from Germany and arrived home in a cab. The very first thing I noticed was no Kristen. So the conversation went like this. Peter, okay, where is Kristen? And Jennifer, she's not coming. She refused to help us. And I said, what? She refused to care for her little brother and sister when she does not have a job and her brother is near death and you have to nurse him? She refused? And Jennifer said, yes. And I said, but you told me that she had accepted and that she was coming back with you. And she simply said, I lied. And I went, okay, so you lied. And you think the way to deal with that lie is to land it on me when I get home and take a look around and she's not here, really. I just shook my head. I was, of course, used to being treated like this by now. This is how great husbands are helped when one of the family members might be dying. Very progressive. And I said, so what am I supposed to do? You have to go back to Sydney to help Jared. I have to go to Germany to pay for everything. What are we supposed to do with the 2 children? And she says, well, that's your problem. I'm going back to Australia. They're staying here. You figure it out. Yes, she actually said that. That's how she presented it. I'm dumping the 2 children here. I'm going back to Australia. You have to earn money for 3 houses. There's 2 children to take care of. I'm not going to help you. I've got my plate full. You work it out. It's basically what the situation was. This is how good husbands are helped. This is cooperation from a wife in the 2000s, right? So I called Kristen and talked to her directly. The conversation went like this, and I have abbreviated it a bit. Me. Mum tells me she asked you to please come to Dublin and care for Josephine and Joshua while she cares for Jared in the hospital in Sydney, and you have said no. Is that correct? And she said, that's correct. I said no. And I said, okay, do you have a reason for saying no? Remember, she's 26 at this stage. At the same age, she's 26. At the same age, I was paying for everything for her. I was looking after her at that age, okay? And she's now been asked to look after her little brother and sister. And she said no, despite the fact that I took care of her. I paid for everything for her. So Kristen said, yes, I'm trying to get a job to move back to China. And I said, it's my understanding that you are unemployed right now and don't actually have a job. Is that correct? And she said, yes, but I'm applying for jobs in China and I want to go back to China. And I said, let me get this straight. I do not want to make any mistakes. You are unemployed. You do not have a job to go to. You have no responsibilities of your own to take care of. You have been asked by your mother to please help the family in our time of need, and you said no to her. Is this correct? And she said, yes, this is correct. I said, okay, fine. That is not acceptable to me. You are going to have to say no to me, and you are going to have to say it on the phone. As the head of this family, I am going to ask you to help your little brother and your little sister in this time of need in your family. We do not know if Jared is going to live or die. Jenny, as his mother, is going to care for him 24/7 and give it our very best shot at keeping him alive. If she is not there 24/7, then he has to be placed into the cancer ward rather than live in the apartments next door. You have seen the cancer ward. Do you want your brother to live out his last days there? Joshua and Josephine cannot have 6 months out of school. If they do, they have to repeat the whole year. I'm asking you directly to come to Dublin and care for your little brother and little sister to meet your obligation as a member of this family. If you say no to me, there will be consequences, and I will determine them at a later date. You are going to have to say no to my face, so to speak. At this point in time, she breaks down crying and sobbing. Okay, just, ah! And the conversation goes on. Kristen says, I love my mother, but I also despise her for what she has done to me. She keeps lying to me. She keeps building up my hopes and then dashing them. I can't stand her lies. Every time she lies to me, it hurts. She said quite a bit more, but you get the idea, right? That was her issue, that her mother lies to her, builds up her hopes and then dashes them. Emotional manipulation. Crushing, building a child's hopes up and then crushing them in order to create an emotional dependency, which is exactly what Jennifer did with Kristen. She said quite a bit more, but you get the idea. And I said, Kristen, your mother is a habitual liar. She thinks lying to people is a way to avoid dealing with situations, and as you know, lying to people to avoid dealing with a situation only makes it worse. Now you are an adult. You have to deal with her. She has always been a liar. She will always be a liar. And there is nothing you or I can do about that other than to just accept that she is a liar and she does not wish to change her ways. She is still your mother. Now, I asked you a question, and I asked it to your face, and I am awaiting your answer. Whatever answer you give me, I'm not going to waste my time arguing the point with you. You will either meet your obligations to your family or you will not. You are an adult. You get to decide if you will meet your obligations or not. And she said, no, I will not help you. I will not help the children. I will not help Jared. That's what she said. It's just a 26-year-old, supposedly adult woman said to my face on the telephone, no, I will not help you. No, I will not help the children, meaning her brother and sister, and I will not help Jared, meaning her brother. That's what she said. How empowered, how liberated, how progressive. So I said, okay, thanks for answering my question. I will deal with you at a later date. I then hung up. Now the really funny thing is that Kristen was at Jennifer's mother's house, right? She was talking to me in one of the bedrooms. When she came out of the bedroom, it was clear she had been crying. So Jennifer's mother, Irene, she told Irene, Jennifer's mother, that she'd been talking to me. So of course, Irene rings Jennifer and claims Peter is a mean, nasty man because he made Kristen cry. So the next thing I know, Jennifer is yelling at me about how I made Kristen cry and how I'm a big, mean, nasty bully. So I turned on her and I told her, do you know why she's crying? She's crying because she is heartbroken at how you treat her. She's heartbroken that you lie to her. She's heartbroken that she tries so hard to win your approval and you are mean and nasty to her and undermine her efforts when all she wants is love and approval from you. She's heartbroken that she loves you dearly and you treat her badly and you lie to her and manipulate her just like you do to me, just like you do with the little children. She is crying because you are a terrible mother. That is why she is crying. She's broken down. She broke down on the phone just now and spilled her guts to me. And you know what? I know how she feels. And I do not blame her for crying one little bit. Now, are you going to call your mother and tell her why Kristen is really crying, eh? Have you got the guts to do that, since she just accused me of being the problem when it is actually you that are the problem, eh? And of course, she did not. So now I had to solve the problem of what to do with two children, 14 and 12, such that I might still be able to make the money that was needed to maintain 3 places to live, one in Dublin, one in Sydney, one in Germany, and pay any expenses that were necessary to be paid over and above what the insurance would cover with Jared, with precious little help from Jennifer. That was now my problem, apparently. Apparently that's not the problem of the mother to help with. Okay? Now on 14 minutes, I will just hit pause and give you the opportunity for a message from our sponsors. And thank you very much for returning. It's much appreciated. So we managed to get Josephine into boarding at her school. They were very flexible in allowing her to do that. As the saying goes, not much more trouble to take care of one mouth to feed, but Joshua's school did not have boarding, so we had to ask around our friends if anyone was willing to please help us in our time of need. Some friends of ours, named the Quinlan Plucks, decided that they felt they could help us on the weekdays. Moira, the lady of the house, was to later betray me, and I was very disappointed in her betrayal, having been good enough to help in this moment of need for our family. Their offer was that I should pick Joshua up on Friday nights and drop him on Sunday afternoons so that I could continue working to support the family. I was very, very upset with Jennifer over this. I told her that I knew Joshua and that he was simply not able to go 12 or 14 weeks at someone else's home without his father or mother there during the week. I said it was not a matter of willpower for Joshua. He was simply not ready as a 12-year-old for this extended absence of both his mother and father. Even if I was home each weekend, it would still be too hard for him. I criticised her and Kristen very heavily for putting Joshua in this position. It was obvious neither of them cared about his feelings. It was clear that Josephine would be fine. She was at that age where being with her friends was cooler than being with her parents. Boarding at the school would be more like a holiday than a chore, but not so with Joshua. And so it was. Over the next 12 or 14 weeks, I would catch the Friday 9 p.m. flight home from Germany to Dublin. I would pick Joshua up on the way home about midnight. Josephine would come home on the Saturday morning, and we would spend the Saturday together doing family-friendly things to make life as easy as we could on Joshua. As the weeks went on, I could see the strain on him, and it was something that I was very aware of. Over the Easter school holidays, we were able to secure a place with some friends for Josephine. Teen girls enjoy time together, and at 14, they are not that much trouble. But there was no place for Joshua that we could secure, so I brought him back to Germany with me. He was to sit quietly in the office playing his computer games and not speak unless spoken to. The men in the office were very busy, and they were not to be disturbed, I had told him. Even though he was only 12, he was going to get a good look at what I did for a living. At that time, I was working about 10 hours a day, so we were arriving at 9 a.m, eating lunch at 1 p.m, and leaving about 8 p.m. In our second week, we were eating dinner at Subway's. It was late, and I was not able to leave the office until about 10 p.m. This is why we were in Subway's and not eating in my small apartment. I did not have the energy to make a meal, and I had to be back in the office at 9 a.m. in the morning, and Joshua was wondering about my job, and the conversation went something like this. He says, "Dad, I don't understand your job. You seem to sit at your computer 10 hours a day, filling in spreadsheets and writing emails. No one ever talks to each other. I see you talking on the phone a lot. It looks like you have conference calls, but the men sitting next to you seem to be on the phone at the same time and seem to be in the same conversation. Can you please explain to me what is happening?" And I was pleased for his curiosity. So I said, and I was working at a company you may have heard of called Electronic Arts, which is a large games company. So I said, "Well, Joshua, you know Electronic Arts is a big company, right? And all 12-year-old boys know who Electronic Arts is. We are working on a project for the new PS3. The PS3 migration for the games is a really big project, and we are working on building a computer system to help them figure out how sales are going all over the world. Our project is very difficult and a very complicated project, not least because this has never been done by anyone before. It is 7 years since the PS2 was launched, so none of the experience is relevant. We are breaking new ground, and because of this, lots of different people have their opinions of how we should progress, and I need to try and tie them all together into a computer system that will help EA." And he said, "But I don't understand. If this is so hard and you need to talk to people so much, why are you never actually talking, except when you seem to be on the telephone? I never see you talking to the men you sit with." And I said, "Well, that's because we talk on the email. The man I sit next to, you've seen him? I sent him more than 20 emails today. We talk a great deal on the email." And Joshua said, "But he's sitting right next to you. Why not just tell him what you need to tell him?" And I said, "I told you that this project is very complex. We have team members in London, Toronto, San Francisco, and also in India. Almost everything I say has to go to at least one person in each of those places. So it is fastest for all concerned if it goes on an email. I can assure you we are talking to each other a great deal just by typing, not by talking. And you have seen that every afternoon we have a conference call. Sometimes it is short and sometimes it is long. On that conference call, we have other people from this building and people in London, Toronto, San Francisco, and India. We are talking a great deal for a project like this exactly because it is so difficult. It's so new and so important. We cannot afford to make mistakes on this project because there are no second chances." He was still not convinced, so he pressed on. And he said, "I do not mean to make you angry or upset, but Mum told me you had a really great job, that it is really exotic. She keeps telling us that you are off having all the fun doing this great job you have while she stays at home with us. She tells us you do not want to be with us because you love your job so much. But this does not look like a great job to me. It looks like a boring job to me. It does not look interesting at all." And I will just say, Jennifer had been telling the children that I love my job more than the children, and that she loves the children more than me because she stays home with the children and I go out having fun at my job. That's what she was telling the children, okay? If you're a Western woman, don't do that. That makes you very unattractive. So I took careful note that Jennifer had been denigrating me to my son and daughter and filed that away for later. Thank you, Jennifer, for telling my children that I love my job more than them, eh? So I then said, "Joshua, most men do very boring jobs. It is the nature of working for a living. If you are going to get really, really good at what you do, then you must do a lot of it. It is not interesting at all to do most jobs. As you have noticed, my job is actually very boring and very tedious. It is long hours and requires a lot of concentration and mental capacity. It is a very difficult job, and there are very few people in the world who can do it as well as I can. This is why Electronic Arts asked me to help them. You know how much money they have, billions, and in all the world, they have asked me to help them on this project. That's very flattering for me, and it should tell you how good I am at my job, that I'm invited and paid to do this, right? But even so, it is a very boring job that is very difficult to do. You have seen what I do for a living. If you sat in my office for a year, you would see me do exactly what I have been doing day in and day out, week in, week out, month in, month out, every year. I said, I've been doing this specific job for 6 years now. This is what I did in America. This is what I did in Saudi Arabia. This is what I did in Romania. This is how I make the money that pays for everything." And Joshua said, "Oh, I see. Well, if you don't mind me saying so, I think," and he said this, he said, "If you don't mind me saying so, I think your job is boring. I don't think I would like a job like yours." And I laughed at him because he was clearly worried about offending me. And I said to him, "Joshua, when I was young, 18, I worked in a steelworks. When the men would go on strike, I would go work on the coke ovens. They are a very hot and dangerous place to work. After a while, I noticed there were no old men in the steelworks. The air is so polluted and the working conditions are so bad that the men all die before they retired. I made up my mind to study computers just as hard as I could and to learn as much as I could to give myself the best chance to get out of the steelworks and get a better job in better conditions. After all, I was going to have to work for more than 45 years. If I was to work for more than 45 years, I wanted to get the best job I could. I especially wanted a job that normally came with an air-conditioned office and a desk, no matter how boring. My worst day in an air-conditioned office at a desk is better than my best day out in the open air on top of the coke ovens, which is where some men spend a great deal of their lives." As I talked, I could see the realization hit him that men were expected to work for 45 years, and as a 12-year-old that this is inconceivable. I mean, a 12-year-old cannot imagine working for 45 years. He went a little quiet after that and thanked me for explaining the situation to him. I guess he had plenty on his mind after that. Just to round out this chapter to show you how different German culture is to Western culture, Jared survived his cancer, and my work colleagues in Germany were very tolerant of my situation. Only the project manager knew the truth, but when Joshua stayed with us in the office, the project manager had to tell his team that I had a family emergency, and he asked them to please be tolerant of Joshua being in the office. All my work colleagues knew better than to directly ask me what the issues were. Once all was settled and we knew that Jared was out of immediate danger, I asked Jennifer to come to Germany, and I invited my work colleagues to dinner. In Germany, when you invite someone to dinner, it also means you're paying for the dinner. The project manager asked all team members to please come if possible, because there was to be a special announcement. He told them that he was sure that each of them would like to be present personally at this announcement. In German culture, when your manager says that he recommends you will want to be present, this is understood as the highest possible recommendation, and that it is simply not possible to disclose why. I was very pleased that all team members accepted my invitation to dinner. At the end of dinner, I stood to make my speech. I explained to my colleagues that 8 months previously my son Jared had been diagnosed with cancer. I explained that he was not expected to live initially, but that a new experimental technique developed in Germany had been used to save his life. I explained that from December until June I had not known if Jared would live, and this of course had affected me greatly personally. I explained that the project manager had been fully informed at all times and had decided that such a personal issue be kept in close circles, which is why they were not told. I told them that I knew I had been under great stress and may have seemed a little difficult over the last 8 months, and that I greatly appreciated the way I had been treated by all my colleagues during this difficult period. I told them that I thanked them very, very much for their tolerance, their support, and professionalism, even though they did not know what was happening for me. Jennifer then stood up and thanked everyone for being kind and generous to our family, for allowing Joshua to be in the office with them over the Easter break, and making it possible for us to make everything right with Jared by employing me and working with me on this project. And it was a really lovely scene. My colleagues were very shocked that this had been going on. They had no idea apart from the project manager. They responded like Germans do. They said they had been honoured to have helped my family in need, and wished that if they were ever in a similar position, that they too would have the help and support of their colleagues. And a good night was had by all. Much food was eaten, much beer was drunk, and everybody had a good time. And we understood a little bit more about, helping people out in time of need. This was one of only 2 times a project manager met Jennifer at a dinner. On my last week there, we went out as a team together again, and I invited Jennifer to that dinner. Some years later, I was talking to him about how Jennifer had treated me in divorce, and his comments were to the effect, "Peter, what you tell me is unbelievable. I have never heard of a woman doing this to a man, lying about you, stealing from you, when you saved her son's life. I saw how you came to work every day when you did not know if your son would live or die, and I'm a father too. I did not know if I could do that if my son had cancer. The stress you were under was unimaginable, and I hope I never have to experience it myself. And even so, she lies about you? I saw myself how she respected you at our dinners together. This is how women treat men in divorce in your country? This is not believable." Those were pretty much the words he said. "This is not believable." And he went back and he recounted, "I met your wife twice, and she showed you great respect because you had earned it, and I saw you come to work every day, not knowing if your son was going to live or die. And this is not worthy of respect in your culture?" He was very surprised. And he would be right. Many people in Germany find it unbelievable how a man like me is treated in divorce in the West. Many people simply dismiss how I was treated, but there are millions of other men treated the same. They will not speak out because they are so thoroughly attacked when they do. Their lives are further targeted, attacked and destroyed merely for speaking the truth. In Germany, the culture is that if you see injustice, you say so. If you stand against injustice, you are praised. If you are attacked and criminally victimized, you are supported, no matter if you are male or female. The people who live in Germany all respond like my old project manager, with sympathy, empathy, and support. And that's why I live in Germany. You can see, women in the West can see how I am attacked and hated on by people in the West. You don't see how I am supported with empathy and friendship in Germany. You don't see that, but I see it, and I see it every day. And with that, I'll close out lesson 13. This closes out the story portion of the book. There may, at a future point in time, be more lessons. The next lessons in this book are lessons based in legislation and law. So, once again, thank you very much for listening.